Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President of Susan B. Anthony List, Marjorie Dannenfelser.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, friends, and thank you, members of the media, for coming out today. It's an incredibly important moment in the history of the country, and I have a great pleasure to introduce somebody that Susan B. Anthony List has grown to know and love very well. I'm Marjorie Dannenfelser. I'm the president of the Susan B. Anthony List. Tomorrow, the Supreme Court will hear the biggest case for the pro-life movement in 2 generations. And today, I have the honor of introducing a longtime friend and pro-life leader, someone I admire, whose tireless advocacy, personally and at nearly every level of public service, has been indispensable in getting us to this pivotal moment. I first met Mike Pence when he was serving as a congressman for Indiana, and he was leading the fight to stop taxpayer funding of Planned Parenthood, America's largest abortion provider. But he was doing that before almost anyone else was talking about it, even in the Republican Party. Now, being pro-life is who he is. It's central to the whole Pence family, including his wife Karen and daughter Charlotte, and their long life of service. All the way back in 2011, on the eve of his decision to run for governor of Indiana, Mike gave the keynote address at the Susan B. Anthony List Gala, and he made a statement which has proven truly prophetic. He said, "We are winning this fight. I believe we are at the beginning of the end of Roe versus Wade." He is a man of great hope, courage, and faith, and he's been unwavering in that conviction throughout all these long years. It was no surprise eventually to see my friend elected vice president in what would become the most pro-life administration in history. It was no surprise to see him cast the tie-breaking vote on legislation to allow states to exclude abortion businesses from funding through the Title X program, and to preside over the reinstatement and expansion of the Mexico City policy to stop dollars from funding abortions overseas by taxpayers, and the Protect Life rule here at home, and to facilitate, most importantly, and for tomorrow, the confirmation of 3 U.S. Supreme Court justices and more than 200 federal judges who respect the Constitution. To be the first sitting vice president, to address the March for Life and so many other aspects of his pro-life leadership. He's a staunch ally of those on the very front lines of the pro-life movement, and also so important for what's happening tomorrow. Those are the selfless workers and volunteers of America's 2,700 pregnancy centers all across the country, who provide vital services to millions of our neighbors each year, frequently without receiving a dime in public funding. Love is at the soul of the pregnancy care movement and the pro-life movement, and thanks to them, we can say yes. We are ready to assist women and families in need so that they can choose life for their children. As a former governor, Mike knows the road to the Supreme Court quite well. The law that he signed as governor banning discrimination abortions made it there just a few years ago. And while the court declined to take a position at that time, at least one justice, Justice Clarence Thomas, held out hope that the merits question, whether the so-called abortion right is really so expansive that it includes a right to eugenic discrimination, would be revisited in the future. The question to be considered tomorrow is even more consequential. Are any limits on pre-viability abortions constitutional? The stakes are nothing less than the lives of millions of little boys and girls waiting to be born and the welfare of their mothers. There's another great figure in the history of human rights battles who comes to mind when I think of Mike Pence, and that is William Wilberforce, the great crusader against the evil of slavery in his time. I paraphrase his words here, which resonate as a call to conscience to this day. Quote, "We may choose to look away, but we can never say again that we did not know." We know the truth, that unborn children are as human while in their mother's womb as each one of us was on the day of our birth and as they are now. Science has eliminated any doubt. Unborn children have beating hearts by 6 weeks, and by 15 weeks, they feel pain. The great majority of Americans believe abortion on demand after this point is cruel and inhumane, and they reject Roe when they understood that it puts us in the company of just a handful of nations like China and North Korea that allow a late-term abortion more than halfway through pregnancy, even up to the moment of birth. Mike's constant saying is, life is winning in America. Our fellow Americans are not missing this moment. State legislatures all across the country are acting on the will of the people who have enacted more than 100 pro-life laws this year alone, more than any other year since Roe v. Wade, sending a strong message to this court. Lawmakers are eager to have the real democratic debate about abortion policy in this country that has been stifled for 50 years under bad precedent, to find consensus and fulfill their duties as duly elected representatives of the people who live there. And there's no question that because of heroes like Mike Pence, and specifically because of Mike Pence, we are standing here today. I could not be prouder to stand beside my friend, the Vice President, with the people of Mississippi and their courageous Attorney General Lynn Fitch, and with all Americans in urging the Supreme Court to do what is manifestly right, correct the injustice, correct the unjust precedents of the past, and consign Roe v. Wade to the ash heap of history. It's time to modernize our law and let the American people protect women and children. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the 45th President of the United States of America, Mike Pence.
Thank you so much. Great comments. Thank you. Well, thank you, Marjorie Dannenfelser, for that overly generous introduction. And more importantly, allow me to take this opportunity to say thank you to someone who I have known and our family has known for many years. Marjorie Dannenfelser, thank you for faithfully devoting your life to the cause of life. We are all grateful. Well, I have a tradition of beginning speeches on this topic, especially those on the National Mall. Welcoming you here to the National Press Club, allow me to say, I'm Mike Pence, and I'm pro-life. And I'm truly honored to be here with so many friends and supporters of the Susan B. Anthony list, an organization that has literally saved countless lives across this country and has raised up a new generation of pro-life leaders in the Congress and in state houses and city halls around the country. The SBA list has truly transformed America for the better over the past 3 decades, and we are in your debt. And to all the advocates of life who join us here today, from the bottom of my heart, let me say thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you for standing for life. It should fill your heart with immense joy and pride to know that every night, somewhere in America, as the sun goes down, there's a young mother in almost every community in the land, tucking a little one to bed, kissing her forehead, saying a prayer, and thanking God that you helped her choose life. And I thank God for each and every one of you too. As Americans, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that first among these is life. I have long believed that a society can be judged by how it deals with its most vulnerable, the aged, the infirm, the disabled, and the unborn. And I did not come here today to speak about popular opinion or jurisprudence. I came here today to speak about right and wrong, to say life is a human right, and urge the Supreme Court of the United States to choose life. Today we gather on the verge of what may be a new era in American history, an era in which all human life is once again cherished and respected, an era in which the great moral questions of our time are once again decided by the people through their chosen representatives instead of unelected judges. As we stand here today, we may well be on the verge of an era when the Supreme Court sends Roe versus Wade to the ash heap of history where it belongs. Tomorrow, our Supreme Court will hear oral arguments in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. The case will decide the constitutionality of a Mississippi law that bans most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. The pro-family advocacy group I founded, Advancing American Freedom, along with SBA List and hundreds of pro-life advocates, including many gathered here today, filed amicus briefs in support of the 15-week limit on elective abortions, and we were honored to do so. We are asking the court in no uncertain terms to make history. We are asking the Supreme Court of the United States to overturn Roe v. Wade and restore the sanctity of life to the center of American law. St. Augustine said, "The truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Just let it loose and it will defend itself." So here's the truth about abortion. Since the Supreme Court legalized abortion in 1973, the heartbreaking consequences of the Roe decision cannot be overstated. More than 62 million unborn children in the United States have been aborted. In other words, nearly 20% of the U.S. population is gone. Lives of incalculable promise were ended before they were born. And countless young women, now for 2 generations, have experienced the heartbreak and sorrow, and often late in life, the regret that can last a lifetime. Like all of you, throughout my career, I have accepted Dr. John Wilkie's admonition to love them both. And when I think of young women victimized by the for-profit abortion industry, it breaks my heart. I think of the young mother who said not long ago, "Not a day goes by that I don't think of my lost child." And she added, "I would never wish this pain on anybody." And those stories of heartbreak are legion. The court's misguided decision in Roe versus Wade has inflicted a tragedy not only on our nation, but on humanity that's hard to fathom. Its scale is unprecedented in the history of mankind. In the 48 years since the court's ruling, unborn children have been relegated into a caste of second-class citizens, devoid of the most basic human rights. Precious babies have lived outside the protection of the law and at the mercy of a culture that devalues them, and an abortion industry that profits from their suffering. Previously, the court has justified abortion on the grounds that it was essential to the stability of American society, but the truth is, nothing has been more destabilizing in our society for the last 50 years than legalized abortion on demand. I believe it's no coincidence that the last half century has seen a persistent rise in family instability, single-parent households, a decline in family formation, an increase in unplanned pregnancies, and an explosion of sexually transmitted diseases. And abortion is even being used increasingly as a tool of eugenics for the elimination of children of the so-called wrong sex or race and those suffering disability. Today, more than 2/3 of all babies with Down syndrome in the United States are aborted in their mother's womb. As governor of Indiana, I got to know many families with Down's children. I saw the endless joy of those families in the gift of the life they were given. And I was proud to sign a law banning elective abortions based on a child's race, gender, or disability, and it is time to end this injustice across America. Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, once wrote that eugenics was, and I quote, the most adequate and thorough avenue in the solution of racial, political, and social problems. Today, Planned Parenthood shamelessly builds on Margaret Sanger's legacy, with the vast majority of its abortion clinics located in Black and Hispanic neighborhoods. Despite being less than 1/3 of America's population, Blacks and Hispanics account for nearly 2/3 of all abortions performed. It's a travesty. As long as Roe remains in force, the radical left in this country will never stop pushing for more and more extreme abortion-related policies. Abortion providers have been caught on video discussing the sale of aborted fetal body parts. And recently, and horrifically, unsealed documents show abortion providers charging tens of thousands of dollars for body parts harvested from unborn children. And in Democrat-run cities across America, they're now providing financial incentives for abortion by implementing paid abortion leave. In Boston, for example, government employees can receive 12 weeks of paid leave for an abortion. The same benefit provided for childbirth. In days gone by, progressives viewed abortion as a necessary evil to be tolerated. Remember when they used to say abortion should be safe, legal, but rare? Well, those days are over. Today, many on the left believe it is a moral good, that abortion is to be celebrated and encouraged, even as it was on a recent broadcast of Saturday Night Live. It's not hard to imagine that the day will soon come when the radical left begins touting abortion as a tool for managing population growth, as the Chinese Communist Party has done for decades. Today, as the Supreme Court prepares to hear oral arguments in those hallowed halls, we are here to declare with one voice, no more. And we are gathered here today on this eve of those important oral arguments to say that we will never stop working to create a world where every child, born and unborn, is protected by law and cherished in life as a precious gift from God. And today there is hope on the horizon that the days of Roe v. Wade are coming to an end. Every serious legal scholar in America knows that the Roe decision was manufactured out of whole cloth to achieve a predetermined political and ideological goal. Even the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg once wrote that the court's decision in Roe versus Wade was, quote, heavy-handed judicial intervention that was difficult to justify. Now our Supreme Court has a chance to right that historic wrong once and for all. And despite what the abortion lobby says, the 15-week limit set forth by the Mississippi law is by any international standard perfectly reasonable. Thanks to advances in modern medicine, the humanity of a 15-week-old child in the womb is undeniable. At 15 weeks of development, a baby's face is formed. She has fingernails, eyebrows, and hair. She can make a fist, suck her thumb. And she has a beating heart. She can feel pain. And she's created in the image of God, the same as you and me. A 15-week limit on elective abortion is not extreme by any measure. Rather, it is the radical left's demands for taxpayer-funded unlimited abortion on demand up to the moment of birth that's extreme. And remember, that's exactly what Roe versus Wade makes possible. But consider the nations of Europe, often held out by left-wing politicians as a model for America to emulate. According to the Lozier Institute, 47 out of 50 European countries limit elective abortion prior to 15 weeks. France, Spain, and Belgium have a limit of 14 weeks. And a majority of European countries are even more restrictive. Germany, Norway, Switzerland, Denmark, Greece, Austria, Italy, and Ireland ban abortion on demand after 12 weeks. When it comes to abortion policy, America has more in common with China and North Korea than it does with Western nations of Europe. By upholding Mississippi's law, the Supreme Court can move America away from the radical fringe and squarely back into the mainstream of Western thought and jurisprudence. The fact is, Americans are ready for an end to the judicial tyranny of Roe v. Wade. And Americans are ready for a return of this issue back to their democratically elected representatives and the people. And this is an important point to stress because the left desperately wants to obscure it. The end of Roe does not mean an end to the debate over abortion. There will still be plenty of debate, but the decisions will no longer be made by unelected judges, but by elected officials chosen by and accountable to the American people. It's easy to understand why progressives oppose allowing the democratic process to work when it comes to setting abortion policy. From the very moment Roe was decided, the American people have been making their preferences clear through the steady march of pro-life legislation enacted by democratically elected representatives each and every year. Think about it. In the decades since Roe, Congress has banned partial birth abortion. Congress and the states have restricted taxpayer funding of abortion. 38 states have passed laws that require parental involvement in a minor's decision. 33 states require expecting mothers to receive counseling before an abortion is performed. 26 states have enacted a mandatory waiting period. And nearly every state in America has allowed healthcare providers to decline to perform abortions for reasons of faith and conscience. When the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, and I believe with all my heart that day will come, either now or in the near future, it will not come as a surprise to anyone. It will simply be the culmination of a 50-year journey whose course and destination has been driven by the will of the American people. As Marjorie said, like all the pro-life champions in this room, I am not new to the cause of life. But I have not grown weary in this fight. I stood for life during my years in Congress, and I offered the first legislation to defund Planned Parenthood on the floor of the United States House of Representatives. As governor of Indiana, I championed the unborn and adoption reform, for to be pro-life, you must be pro-adoption. And I couldn't be more proud to have served as vice president in the most pro-life administration in American history. Every day we stood without apology for the sanctity of life. Under our administration, we reinstated the Mexico City policy to ensure that no taxpayer dollars were used to fund or promote abortion around the world. We cut funding to the United Nations Population Fund. We opposed efforts at the UN to make abortion an international human right. And we also confirmed nearly 300 conservative judges to our courts at every level, including 3 Supreme Court justices, all of whom are committed to upholding all the God-given liberties enshrined in our Constitution. And it was perhaps my highest honor as President of the Senate to cast the tie-breaking vote to allow states to defund Planned Parenthood. But how times have changed. Today, a new administration is advancing abortion on demand at home and abroad. President Biden has even abandoned his historic support of the Hyde Amendment. And now he and Democrat majorities in the Congress support taxpayer funding of abortion. Now more than ever, we need our new conservative majority in the Supreme Court of the United States to return the question of life to the states and the people. And traveling across this great nation of ours, I can tell you firsthand that the support for the pro-life cause is growing stronger every day, in no small part because of the work of each and every one of you. As we stand here today, nearly 500 pro-life bills have been introduced nationwide this year alone. And while I can't say how the Supreme Court will rule, today I can say with absolute confidence that the tide has turned for the pro-life movement. And momentum for the cause of life has never been stronger. Life is winning across America. Life is winning because of the quiet counsels between mothers and daughters, between grandmothers and granddaughters. The truth about abortion is being told. And life is winning because of the relentless advocacy of groups like the SBA list and others so well represented here who have never given up the fight for the unborn. And the American people deserve to know that our safety net for mothers and babies has never been stronger. America is ready, willing, and able to support women in need. Even as states work to reduce abortions, they're also working to increase support for vulnerable mothers. Texas, for example, has created a $100 million Alternatives to Abortion program to provide counseling, material assistance, and housing support to women experiencing a crisis pregnancy. And similar programs are expanding all across the country. The truth is, life is winning. I think maybe most especially because of the compassion and the work of nearly 3,000 pro-life pregnancy centers nationwide. These organizations are devoted to supporting mothers in their courageous decision to give their children life and a future, oftentimes under the most difficult circumstances. And the counselors, most of whom are volunteers, and many of whom are women recovering from the heartbreak of abortion, inspire me every day. In 2019 alone, crisis pregnancy centers served nearly 2 million expectant mothers with compassion and care. And I can attest to it firsthand. It was a little more than a year ago, I had the privilege of being the first Vice President of the United States to visit a crisis pregnancy center and thank them for all their work. Finally, life is winning in America as a new generation has been awakened. The eyes of millions of young people have been opened. And we're changing the culture for life, one life at a time. I witness this every year that we attended the March for Life on our nation's capital. And over these past 20 years, traveling all across this country, even this past year as a private citizen, I can attest. This rising generation is the pro-life generation. Life is winning in America, but now we need life to win in the highest court in the land. In the coming days, as the Supreme Court takes up this fateful decision, I want to encourage conservatives, those here today and all across America, to be confident. Keep the faith and pray. The effective and fervent prayer of a righteous people availeth much. So I encourage each and every one of you, tomorrow and every day after, to take this matter to the throne of grace. We have not struggled for so long. We have not traveled so far or overcome so much to turn back so close to the finish line. And never doubt, the American people are on our side. They're ready for a fresh start. They know that the decision before the Supreme Court is the same choice voters will face in the next election. It's a choice between two distinct futures, two distinct worldviews that are as far from one another as the East is from the West. The left believes children are a burden. We believe children are a gift from God. The left believes the institution of the family is outdated and unnecessary. We believe that family is the bedrock of civilization. The left believes it's their right to force their radical beliefs on a society through unelected judges. We believe in government of the people, by the people, and for the people. The question before the court and before the American people is no less than this. What kind of nation do we want to be? in the balance of the 21st century. Do we want to be a nation that tolerates abortion on demand? Denying our country the incalculable promise of men and women who would contribute so much to the life of this nation? Do we want to be a nation that tolerates the ending of innocent, unborn human life through all 9 months of pregnancy? Because that's what the left wants. Or in the time that we have ahead, in this century and beyond, do we want to be a nation that champions and celebrates the gift of human life? A nation that comes alongside women in their hour of need. A nation that stands up for the weak and fights for the defenseless. A nation that says proudly and without apology that every life matters, every child deserves a chance. I believe that is who we are in our heart of hearts as Americans, and I believe that is who we will be again. So on this day, the day before the Supreme Court hears oral arguments in the Dobbs case, we hope and pray that our renewed conservative majority on the court will restore the sanctity of life to the center of American law. This is about saving the lives of millions of children yet unborn. But make no mistake about it, this is also about justice and the future of this nation. I believe that ending an innocent, defenseless human life grieves the heart of God. The one who said, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you," admonished us in the Proverbs with these words: rescue those being led away to death. Hold back those staggering toward slaughter. If you say, "But we knew nothing about this," does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? Does not he who guards your life know it? In words that are enshrined in the very walls of the Jefferson Memorial, we remember what Thomas Jefferson said. And it echoes into our time and into this debate. Thomas Jefferson wrote, "God who gave us life gave us liberty. Can the liberties of a nation be secure when we have removed the conviction that these liberties are a gift from God?" And then he added, "Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, and his justice cannot sleep forever." So to everyone here and those looking on, thank you. Thank you for bringing us to this day when the American people are on the eve of an opportunity to reclaim a society where every life is treated with compassion, dignity, and respect. For our children and grandchildren, born and unborn. For young women facing the crisis of an unexpected pregnancy. For the rule of law, and for America. I urge my fellow Americans to cherish life, to pray tomorrow and every day between now and next spring for the justices on our Supreme Court to have the courage to seize this moment for life. And join us as we humbly ask our new conservative majority on the Supreme Court of the United States: overturn Roe v. Wade and give America a new beginning for life. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you.
I think this is working, yeah. So what I whispered was best speech I've ever heard on life, and I've heard a few. Thank you. Especially during this week, it's a big one. With so much hope. I hear it in your voice, it's in the room, it's all across the country. Similarly, let me just dash it for a minute. No, I'm not gonna dash it, but I do wanna ask you a serious question, and that is, we've been at this place a couple of times in the past, heading towards the Supreme Court with great hope for a good result, thinking of the Casey decision. What makes this moment different?
Well, first off, Marjorie, I want to thank you and SBA List for organizing this event with Advancing American Freedom. And as I said at the outset of my remarks, I want to thank you personally for your relentless dedication to the cause of life. You have changed the debate, and the SBA List is specifically responsible for electing women and men to state houses and the Congress across the United States who stand without apology for the right to life, and I thank you for that from my heart.
Thank you.
I honestly, I'm actually very hopeful now. And I do believe that Roe versus Wade will be overturned, whether it's now or in the near future, because I truly do believe that the conscience of our country has awakened to the cause of life. And I've been particularly encouraged to see that among young people that I know your organization works with every day. I was at Texas A&M for a speech, and literally hundreds of students came out, and I was so inspired at their passion and their commitment to the conservative cause. But you know as well as I do that in this rising generation, support for the right to life grows literally by the day.
That's right.
And I do believe it's a result. It's certainly a result of political activism and electing men and women that make the case for life. It's certainly, I believe, and profoundly a result of crisis pregnancy centers. But I also believe that it is also coming from within families. The highest title I will ever hold is DAD, right? And
How about granddaddy?
I'm a proud father of 3 kids, all married, happily, and we just had a new grandbaby this year. And,
Congratulations.
and we love it. But I will tell you that looking at my kids' generation, there's certainly diverse views on a broad range of issues. But on life, I see kids responding in a way that I think ultimately comes from family.
Yeah.
I honestly think that in the quiet counsels between mothers and daughters, between grandmothers and granddaughters, over kitchen tables, the truth about abortion is being told. And that is, I believe, changing the culture, and it's creating the environment where we've been able to have the political success we had, elect the administration that I was proud to be a part of, and see 3 strong conservatives appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States, and a renewed conservative majority on the Supreme Court that will review the Dobbs case tomorrow.
That's right. So I share that hope, and we see that same conversation, the council over the kitchen table. We see that every day. We see it in the battleground states, which of course are significant in upcoming elections. We see it and people who have really not talked about this issue. It's just been sort of in the air, but hasn't gotten into their hearts and minds. This moment is coming where it will be impossible to ignore. So I share that hope. I do. And I believe that 4 justices who had to agree to listen to this case that asked the one question, are any pre-viability abortion limits constitutional? To ask that question, to set themselves up only to reaffirm Roe versus Wade seems unlikely, but we'll see. It's just a few months away, and we'll see what the answer is. I'm interested in if our hopes are well-founded and there's either a full or partial overturn of Roe versus Wade. What do you think that means in terms of the Democratic Party? And I ask it with one couple of assumptions in mind. One, what the contrast will look like when it's not just a theoretical debate. It's going to be a conversation and legislation that actually ends in real consequences for women and children. Over time, in the short term, I would say that they're probably going to suffer some losses because they haven't come back to any point of consensus. But do you think long term, as a former Democrat, you could see the Democratic Party at least come back a little bit over time? Over a third of Democrats recently identified themselves as pro-life, which surprises people.
Well, I was a Democrat in my youth. Then I heard the voice of Ronald Reagan, and I joined the Reagan Revolution and never looked back. But I think I have no doubt that a significant number of Democrat voters in America believe in the sanctity of life. No doubt whatsoever. But the reality is that their office holders today support abortion on demand, taxpayer funding of abortion, the promotion of abortion using tax dollars around the world, and maybe most profoundly, as you've witnessed in this day of cancel culture, the Democratic Party has been busy driving out and silencing pro-life voices within their own party. And so for my part, I mean, I hope and I pray that the Supreme Court of the United States next year will see its way clear to returning this question to the states and to the people. And that in and of itself will be an extraordinary victory.
Indeed.
For America. But I think I'm very proud that our party, over what has been nearly 50 years, has stood consistently and championed the cause of the right to life, and people who cherish life and want to see women and men elected who will stand for the unborn know where to go. Yeah. And that's the Republican Party in the 21st century.
Yeah, I mean, my thought is like Roe guaranteed constant battle with no resolution, constant frustration, right. All the marching, all the frustration, theoretical battles that end up in no real consequence. That when we see the unfolding of democracy in this country, state by state by state, where consensus is formed, allowed its way in the law, there will also be, as you mentioned in your remarks, great need that already exists to attend to the needs of mother and child.
Right.
I know your daughter Charlotte, who's always a great topic when we're together, because I love and admire her so much, is very much involved in that work, right. And it's the work of her heart. Maybe you could describe a little bit about how you see us moving concretely, maybe a little bit about what Charlotte's doing too.
Well, thanks for mentioning my daughter. She writes for the Daily Wire. All
right, way to go.
Charlotte Pence Bond, and just like her daddy, Charlotte Pence Bond is pro-life. I'm proud of her. She's been a great champion and very, very involved in a number of youth organizations that are promoting life. But there's a part of me that really believes that this moment in history belongs more to her generation than to ours. That I'll carry the banner as long as I have breath in my lungs. I will stand for the right to life. But my hope comes so much from seeing the passion and the compassion of young people, and particularly to see the advent of these organizations, crisis pregnancy centers, and, as we also had in Indiana, state-sponsored programs that provide pregnancy services to women facing crisis pregnancies. I mean, it's been one of the, I think it's been one of the smears of the left over the last 50 years, that the people that believe in the right to life care about unborn babies, but once they're born, they're on their own. And I've seen the exact opposite traveling around the country. And you mentioned there's nearly 3,000 crisis pregnancy centers in the nation. But what you reflected on, and I did as well, is in states like the one I mentioned in Texas, in Indiana, where we had a program, there's also been a concerted effort to make sure that we are there for unwed mothers who choose life, to be able to have a support, have a community, have resources, to be able to be confident that they'll be able to make their way into the world. And I think it's vitally important. If the Supreme Court of the United States overturns Roe v. Wade, it will not, as many in the left and many in the media will suggest, ban abortion in America. It will simply return the issue to the states. And I think there'll be two very important debates that take place. Number one will be in state houses around the country advancing the kind of reforms that would be enabled by the Dobbs decision, that would advance the cause of life. And number two, and in the same breath, I would expect our movement would do well to also focus on those programs, public and private, that are going to come alongside
That's right.
young women and help them choose life.
Yeah, and in fact, it's one of the most, I would say, in all the decades of doing this work, this would be one of the moments of greatest inspiration and excitement over all pro-life organizations in every state that you can name, where they will be most ambitious, say 30 states or so, ambitious in enacting laws if they have the room to do so, that the pro-life organizations, and we're working closely with them, working hard to do complete inventories of every single thing available to mother and child on the continuum of care, whether it be physical or mental health care, education, first 2 years of life, child care, knitting all of those resources together across the state and then identifying the gaps and fill them in is the work of the pro-life movement always, but is most urgent right now and is something that is a beautiful thing to see, and there'll be more of that to come. It's not political.
It is a beautiful thing to see.
It is, yeah.
I mean, when I visited the Crisis Pregnancy Center last year in Tampa, it was not the first time either I or my wife had been to a crisis pregnancy center. We're proud to stand with them in the state of Indiana, but to see the way volunteers come alongside young women and
stay with them
and offer them hope,
right?
and
friendship.
And particularly, I cherish the crisis pregnancy centers that also bring a message of faith to people. That there are, my faith believes in new beginnings and in grace, and to tell people that whatever has brought you to this day, there's a new beginning, and there's hope and there's support.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful thing to see and to watch.
And I think it will lead America in many new directions, not just specific to the abortion issue, but in many other ways of generosity. What a beautiful example. I've got one more question that is in the other territory of not so beautiful sometimes, but in politics, which is what almost every reporter wants to talk about when we speak, and that is about the effect of a potential overturn of Roe versus Wade right before midterms, say June or July, whether it's a full or partial overturn, its effect on midterms, and how do you think that's going to look? And the presidential, but most eminently the midterms.
Well, I think, as someone like you and like so many of these heroes in the room, I've labored in these vineyards for all of my adult life. And so thinking about the impact on a particular election seems small compared to the impact on the life of the nation. You know, when I look at our country today, and you witness the breakdown of the family and the rise of violent crime in our cities and the whole range of social maladies that we face, I identify a lot with what Mother Teresa said at a national prayer breakfast during the Clinton administration. That at the very center of so much of what's happening in our nation is abortion. And I really believe that if our Supreme Court will see its way clear, that it will unleash a new era and a season of renewal in our country. But with regard to the elections, I would anticipate that if the Congress and the State House are given new leeway by the Supreme Court, post-Roe, to advance legislation for the sanctity of life, I believe that millions of Americans will rally to the cause and will stand with women and men who are willing to stand for public office and stand for life. And it will have an impact in the short term and in the long term, not just for politics, but for life.
Agree. Thank you. Well, I've just been given the hook. So it looks like we're done. But I thank you so much for that incredible speech, for communicating to the nation and to the Supreme Court about what we hope. And thank you all for coming, media and otherwise, heroes of the pro-life movement. And I'll stick around a little bit for questions, but I know you have to skedaddle, I hear.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Join me in thanking Marjorie, SBA List, and all the great heroes who are here. It's an honor to be with you all.